I'm sorry. What? This was my response on my 16th birthday when I received the news from my uncle. My response when he casually threw out the question to my family, "Now wasn't it Sarah who was almost kidnapped when she was born?" Special thanks to my dad's twin for introducing this piece of my story to me, unknown prior to my 16th birthday. On my birthday, around our dining room table, following a birthday dinner, my parents shared with me this story. The story of them learning a suspicious woman came into the hospital room where I was after I was born. The story of doctors and nurses making the decision to move my mom to a more secure room. The story of the decision to take my name off the hospital door, to take down the pink bow, to take my birth announcement out of the paper. They shared with me the story of fear, of being on the move, of being separated from family members' phone calls, of acting in anticipation of what could have been. As we gathered around our dining room tables this past week in celebration of the birth of Jesus, I would imagine we were probably not recounting the gospel lesson today as part of the Christmas story we hold so dear. Most Christmas pageants don't include the story of Mary and Joseph and Jesus gathering their things and fleeing to Egypt, escaping a scary, threatening leader. More than likely, the story we tell year after year is of Mary and Joseph in an inn, surrounded by animals, maybe some shepherds. Jesus is born, and it's a silent night. But what if that night wasn't so silent? What if we looked outside the inn, outside of the cave, the manger? What if the good news of the Christmas story is made more powerful and more known to us if we also tell the messed up, broken story into which Jesus was born? The book that I read moments ago to the children is entitled Refuge, and it has the subtitle, The Timeless Story of Christmas. This year and each year at Christmas, we celebrate God becoming human, being born to human parents. We celebrate God incarnate in Jesus Christ. We rejoice that God knows what it is to be human. This Christmas story is one of fear and fleeing and of terror, but it's also one of hospitality and welcome. It's one of a human experience known to God in Jesus. And in a year that has felt honestly anything but normal, in 2016, a year that has felt scary and uncertain, we need a Christmas story that shows us that God too has lived this life in Jesus. Today we hear that God knows our fear, but God also knows the fear of our neighbors in Syria, in Turkey, in Mexico, El Salvador, and in Palestine, seeking refuge, fleeing oppression, and terrible leaders. On a hot afternoon in Malaysia, my bus ride back from the city to my house, a man sat down next to me on the sticky leather seat of the bus. And I tried to start a conversation with him in Malay, and realized that his Malay, much like mine, was broken. So we tried switching to English. A tall, thin, dark-skinned man with a big beard introduced himself as Thomas. He looked different from those who I was with in Malaysia most days. And I asked him where he was from, and he told me he was from Palestine. He and his family fled to Malaysia when his town was invaded and occupied by the Israeli military. With tears in his eyes, he told me about the family he had left behind in Palestine, saying he hasn't been back, and he hasn't heard from his family since he arrived in Malaysia 12 years before. He said, "Where I'm from, it's hard for Muslims, but here, my family is safe." Thomas's story was one of deep fear and pain and loss, but his story is also one of finding welcome. As Jesus and his family found refuge in Egypt, Thomas and his family found refuge in the Muslim community in Malaysia. In a world that teaches that refugees are to be feared, Thomas and his family found a hospitable community in an otherwise hostile world. The story of Thomas is not unique to him and his family. It's a story we hear in today's gospel reading, and it's a reality known to many in our world today. When we share these stories, we come to know the humanity behind them. As we gather around our tables, whether for a 16th birthday dinner, a Christmas dinner, or a family gathering, we always share stories. We share stories from our history, from the world around us. We share stories that stir something in us. Stories that remind us that we ourselves are human and others are also human. So in a small city, a city with a questionable reputation, with stereotypes propagated by the powerful leaders, a baby was born. And a leader with much power and much hate said to those that he surrounded himself with, "These people are dangerous, and we must get rid of them." And so having heard their lives were at risk, the baby's family fled. Where they were going and who would welcome them, they did not know, but they knew they must leave. Surrounded by people, fueled by fear and distrust of that which they did not know, this family continued to search for a place where their lives would not be at risk. And that is what they found. They found a place where they were welcomed, housed, clothed, and fed. They found a place where their humanity was seen and honored. Whether this story happened 2,000 years ago or today, it continues to be the story of Jesus' entrance into this world. And with God's help, it is up to us to decide who we will be in this story. We can be Herod, allowing fear to taint how we encounter and perceive others, how we encounter Christ, or we can be Egypt, serving as a refuge, hearing and believing what we hear countless times in Scripture. Fear not, I am with you.